a class that is a mix between a shaman, a fire mage, and a shadow priest that also has the ability to reanimate undead, this would be like an elemental warlock wielding Shadow Flame. If you guys can follow the development, you might have noticed that Blizzard went through way too much effort to create this Cosmic Void and Shadow Flame with all these new spell effects and all these visual effects and a ton of new lore that really seems to be beyond a single patch. A lot of it really seems like the early stages of a new class. This is akin to all the Void lore that we got in Legion that ultimately led to the Void Elves being introduced. We also have hints of the elemental things happening in the next expansion with Troll as one of the main characters of 11.0. Additionally, Firak, the Fire Primal Incarnate, absorbed all this Shadow Flame and is the only one that was able to control it, which means that the story is yet to begin. So, what are all these spells? What really is Shadow Flame? And is this a setup for a new class? That week has been doing nefarious stuff in his library, but did you know that people are doing nefarious stuff with your private info, and you can stop that right now with this video sponsor, Aura. I've personally had people making fake accounts with my info, and it's not fun. However, Aura is not just another run-of-the-mill privacy protection service, it's your shield against the unseen forces that seek to exploit your personal information. It handles the removal of your private info, there's a VPN, a password manager, amongst other features, all super easy to set up. Let Aura do the hard work keeping you safe so that your private data remains just that private. Best of all, you can try Aura completely free for 2 weeks with my link in the description or the QR code, so you can let people profit off your data, or you can go to aura.com/DoransMovies and start your free trial today. In the past, we've had the Void, which we thought was literally the epitome of evil, and we just got a brand new Void race. We also have been wielding the Void for a really long time, and we've always had the good Warlocks, despite the fact that Fel itself was pretty chaotic, consuming, and evil by pretty much all terms. However, now as we are exploring Neltharion's forgotten experiments, and we've already pretty much repurposed his private army that was actually built for nefarious purposes, they joined our faction, it's pretty much just one step forward to study and repurpose the magic he has built and to start wielding it with a brand new class. So the most important thing to mention is just how much effort has actually gone behind the scenes in regards to this. If you guys have followed the development and what has been going on behind the scenes, Shadow Flame and Cosmic Void has gotten a lot of work on them, especially Shadow Flame. We got all this new lore, all this interference of Firak, which is a major character, a bunch of these brand new, really well developed spell effects, a ton of new spells, new NPCs. I really don't think it's unpopular to say that 10.1 wasn't really that big of a patch or even really that big of a deal or really that interesting, so it is highly unlikely that they just went through all this effort just to introduce a new magic, to create a ton of these spell effects worthy of a class, just so they can add a few more details to 10.1, especially with all this new lore and Firak's story that is still unfinished at this point. So an interesting thing to note is that Shadow Flame is, unbeknownst to many, not actually a new magic. In fact, it has been in the game for a really long time, pretty much since the start, but it was always super vague and we had no idea what it really was. It was similar to how, for example, we knew Shadowlands was a thing in WoW lore since forever, but we only had this tiny bit of vague flavored text, and then we got an entire expansion out of it. I would say even Blizzard didn't really know what it was. Like, it just kind of sounded cool, like Shadow and Flame, so it's this super cool magic. They told us it was sort of like Fel back in the day, but with this new lore, it is definitely not Fel. However, now we have the new lore, so we kind of know what is going on, at least to a major extent. Shadow Flame actually does exist on different planets. It is not an invention of Deathwing. From the current understanding, Deathwing may have learned about this and decided to recreate it on Azeroth, as we were told he's the originator of it on Azeroth. It came to be in Aberos for the first time. However, when you examine what it is, I don't think it is actually that hard to recreate it. I mean, since you can pretty much wield a void anywhere and every planet has elemental magics inside, so you can just kind of combine the two. With the new lore, we know that Shadow Flame is a mix of obviously Shadow and Flame, so void energies combined with elemental energies, and you can see this based on the spell effects. You got all these elemental spells with this shadowy, like void-like outline. However, just like how you have shamanism, this would be the dark version, the dark shamanism. Think of it something like how you have a mage and a warlock. I'd say the best way to describe it is really some sort of like fell elemental dark shamanism. Now, as we have explored Aberos and the Zerala Caverns, we know what has been happening, and it obviously isn't nice. Neltharion has essentially enslaved, consumed elementals, tortured them to create this power source, and this is actually a reason why Firak, the fire dragon, came in and just absorbed all this crazy power. This was obviously Ridicron's plan to empower themselves, but what is really interesting is that Firak is the first dragon to ever fully control this magic, and honestly, I'd attribute this to the fact that he's elemental in nature. Neltharion eventually got consumed, but this is like the primal elemental magic, and who best can wield it than pure elemental being like the actual primal incarnates. Now, this is where I think we may be in for a new class, or for this magic being relevant in the future to a major extent. As I said, this was not just some random new Neltharion lore, but obviously a setup for something happening soon, as this story never really finished, and Firak is obviously still around and he has consumed this magic. This is also evident with just how much sheer effort went into building these new spells. Think of it something like how we had the Void stuff back in Legion with so many details, so many of these characters, these trans-dimensional travels. Sure, we didn't get a new class, but we got the Void Elves pretty soon, and this new Void lore was not just a single patch thing for Legion, so it kinda made some sense. However, the thing that ties all this together, why I actually think it is going to be a class, is the fact that all the hints that we currently have say that Troll is going to be the main characters of the next expansion, and seeing that Troll is not really that relevant, he's not a war chief, what he is a very powerful shaman that defeated Deathwing in the past, that once saved us during Cataclysm, and if he is back, it is very likely that something elemental is going to be happening in the next expansion. Why I'm saying this is that Blizzard about 2 weeks back released the official BlizzCon art that showed us each character of the relevant franchises, and pretty much every time this had happened in the past, it was a hint for the next expansion. Back in 2017, we got Jaina on the artwork, and lo and behold, we got BFA and Kul Tiras. In 2019, we had Sylvanas on the announcement art, and we got Shadowlands. It's only haven't been a thing for Dragonflight that didn't happen, but we didn't really have the convention, there really was no BlizzCon announcement. So when you think about it, they're creating all these new spell effects, all this new elemental lore. There are hints that Azeroth herself is elemental in nature, and something elemental could be happening in the next expansion. How likely is that just how we started using the Void for good, we could start repurposing Neltharion's nefarious Shadowflame and start wielding it, and we could get some type of a dark shaman class very much akin to Warlocks or to the Shadow Priests. If this does happen, how would this work, and what type of spells would these casters use? Interesting enough, as I said, this is not the first time we had seen Shadowflame, and we've had it in WoW for a really long time. We had Nefarian and Onyxia kinda recreating their own version and actually wielding Shadowflame, although I would say this was like dollar store version of Shadowflame. However, we know that it had actual necromantic properties, it could actually raise undead, and we have seen legit Scourge necromancers using Shadowflame as well, although on rare occasions. We have also seen a ton of experiments that Neltharion had created by infusing Arcane with all sorts of stuff, but also with Shadowflame. So this Shadowflame class would literally be a mix between an elemental shaman, a fire mage, and a shadow priest, and in fact, if this does happen, it could turn out to be incredibly interesting. At the same time, just how they started creating these Shadowflame spell effects and everything, they also made more Cosmic Void spells, so this is obviously a mix of the Cosmic Void, and while we'll always had Shadow and Void magic, this really seems different than the old god stuff that we had previously seen. It is a different color, it seems more cosmological. We even got new lore of Anne Shul, the cosmological time traveler, which could even be a dark version of our sun, we don't really know at this point. Void obviously seems relevant. We have the new Shadow of Azeroth hints with the Void Elves happening in the Eastern Kingdoms. Blizzard updated some apps for this old part of Kotalas, which is really strangely covered in the Veil of the Void, and it has been for a few years. At the same time, we got a ton of old god hints and Void hints for the next expansion as well, from literal new old god Whisperers to Queen Ashara returning soon from the Veil of the Void. Now, Shadowflame is inherently tied to the Void, it is literally 50% of the Void, so if the next expansion is Void and elemental related, I mean, what other magic would be more relevant than Shadowflame? It would literally be the Shadowflame expansion. Obviously, this would need to be explored more and a bit further developed, but I'm pretty certain that something is going to be happening soon, seeing that Firak himself is infused with it and we haven't fought him yet. So, just how we turned the Draktyr Neltharion's personal experiment into an asset for the Horde and the Alliance, I could totally see us doing the exact same thing with his magic and getting a new order of shamans or even mages studying it and deciding for a safe way to actually implement this magic and start using it for good. Thank you for watching. Check out what is the next expansion by clicking on the screen, and check out Donuts Academy for videos on real world history. See you next time.